So I went and did a bit of a scavenger mission on some people's channels, and I have to leave the links in the description. They went out into the field doing some good old field work, getting down and dirty. And yeah, no, that's really awesome. Yeah, we don't see enough of these remote depictions. So you might think, oh yeah, we're looking at some primitive dots and squiggly lines, Mr. Squiggle, man from the moon. And it's pretty funny. Yeah, squiggly dots and circles. One would easily think this is from a primitive mind, and most people think, oh yeah, they're just drawing animals, depicting animals. Some are a bit far out, even dinosaur-like, and that leads people to think, oh yeah, they're fake, because yeah, it's like doesn't line up. Well, dinosaurs in their time, nah. So I'm gonna get to the bottom of that. We're gonna have to get a bit shamanistic. Hopefully you can see the process as I go through these of interpretation. So where should I start? I might as well, okay, I'll start with the dots. I've done other glyph videos. I like to keep record of these for sure. Anywhere I can, everywhere I can. They're just as complex as, like they have the same principle as Egyptian abstractions to start with. Okay, so we're going to have to go into what's being called plasma events. Certain cosmic cycles, it seems, are recorded on these rock walls. So if you haven't been watching Mr. MBB 33 or whatever, or you haven't been seeing these things in the sky, you've been living under a rock. Now those dots in formation, especially, you've all seen them scattered around, but there are formations a lot of the time that we see, and yeah, it can be easily backed up. So we're looking at something interdimensional here, not coming from like light years away. They're making regular appearances, especially at this time, these times. The nature of these squiggly lines is interesting, and the stick figures, we'll go into that too. We've discussed like plasma experiments and how these shapes come up in the lab, the same shapes. So that's where they're connecting the plasma events in the sky to these glyphs, which is fair enough. So we have another squiggly line. So we're going to get into the worm in this one as well. These glyphs can describe a lot about reality and what's occurring even in the current time, and why, and what these things are exactly. So we're gonna go to like people that have experienced this before and have to get into their mindset, decode their language. Okay, so looking at an electrical event, but it's not totally electricity per se. I found this one picture of like not enough. I even have it ready. Or you can even see it. But anyway, he's having the rays of the sun kinda. He's pouring the substance. I don't know if you can see it, but every time in every other picture, like he's pouring water out of something, it's a smooth flow. But when it comes to under the solar disk, it's a shame you can't see it. The water is very specifically jagged, just like what we see. So it's like he's transforming some sort of energy form there into a more physical variety. And I think we discussed language or lettering coming from the glyphs. Like for instance, we see like, and here, sorry about the dark gloomy imagery, it's just something random. Like I took, say, like a T and a Y, which were certain things, like symbols that appeared in the shapes of the stick figures, and I combined them just like they do. And yeah, you can see certain, like even runic lettering types, or perhaps Asian even, but yeah, whatever. So yeah, and they were doing like not just experiments, I guess. They're showing how like plasma has its own form of DNA. So we're looking at something that's a life form as well, a consciousness there, and some can probably manifest more physically than others, and when they combine, like I said, they can enter this reality. And in here there seems to be a lot of them. Like they're a lot like that. Like see how they're like not very detailed and like lack of features like a human being, and some of them waving, whatever. Here's more dots in formation, and you see like letters and number like things appear with them. Where can I show you like more stick figures of them? We'll go into that later. Need more stick figures. Go into the animal situation later. Oh god. Anyway, here's like some of them. So like I showed you these like basic forms of reality, how even the human brain structure reflects some of them, and see that's a common Egyptian stance. You see, here we see someone associated with animals. We'll get into the animal connection straight away, just to describe how this fits in with a solid perspective on things. So I mentioned Mr. MBB33's channel. I'll put his links there too, just in case you haven't been watching. You need to see it. But recently he posted something about these animals at one time recently in a lot of areas started coming up to human beings, and it's like something triggered them to override the fear response. And we see animals with a lot of depictions of these things, like non-human entities with animals, and like, yeah. So once again, the timing of the situation, the magnetic excursion, like things are out of whack at the moment. So yeah. And the mythology, like Noah tells us, how he gathered the animals. Like, they probably weren't hard to gather if they got a trigger response that's connected to earth changes. So we're going more into the animal situation. You can't see it on this once again, but in here, in the horse, there's a lot of dots. Now we have to connect the dots. I think maybe it's a spotted horse, but this thing is spotted to the extreme. Okay, so I took that into account, and I took the dots into account. Once again, dots everywhere. Animals herding together. They are a herd animal, I suppose, but not really. They're also solitary. Okay, we see with them also this worm-like or snake-like image. So here it is again. There's a better picture of the worm. So, okay, you see the animals here, and in their bodies, those dots, or there's highlighted sections now. I don't discount that as random. These highlighted sections, as you can see them on the feet there, but they're also in the body, if you ever get a clearer view. Once again, so you see those highlighted sections, and there's a big thing coming out of its rectum. This plasma worm. And over here too we see, like, it looks like droppings on the ground pretty much, but you see that shape, its tail going into plasma form, its feet looking like mutation. So it's an external observation of something that's happening internally within it, like even genetically. And I'm probably gonna, I'm pretty sure I have reached the conclusion that it's something parasitic. You can see the end, the head of the worm there. Parasitic, and like I keep doing vids about viruses, how they're able to control perception and even control the individual, compel them physically. We see it in the animal kingdom all the time. It's highly prolific. So this, I'm pretty sure that long one came out of the cow's rectum, as we can see, and we know that's an area in the intestinal region, like carries a lot of parasites. So these things in the sky we see behind them also have a connection to parasitic influences and things that are in our genetics that they may have put there, that sometimes may compel us to them. Okay, so the animals isn't a hunting thing or a record of the animals in the area. It's more of a Noah's Ark thing. So these beings that are appearing, waving in the sky, in the Gnostic text you could call them watchers. So they did have a purpose, but some of them have become sentient and gone beyond their programming, reprogramming, and convinced other ones, like made other ones. So you see another dinosaur, weird creature up here. And this is because when it comes to these plasma records, like these things are originally responsible for the natural world and its cycles of destruction. It's in the duality, like the program. So that's interesting. Like it's all like written about and shown here throughout history. So we're looking at like a circle, an empty space. So it's a portal, and they're coming out of it. And I can relate to that. Like I've been looking up at the sky, and I've seen them moving in and out of these things. They're not always friendly to each other either. But just behind that layer, yeah, they're there, and you can see that layer. You can see that there are weather effects that surround it, what they're creating to use as camouflage. So yeah, that's a bit of a rundown on the plasma universe. If you haven't gotten into the electric universe models, check them out. They're pretty awesome. Yeah, so the worm is interesting. How I mentioned the worm, and I showed you that the head of it, did I? It's like, sorry, flicking through. Not trying to do anything subliminal, but see the head of that worm, how it goes from plasma into a more physical form. What was it now? So, and once again you see it's probably like Ishtar. How I show like a black mirror of Isis. We have like Ishtar also in conjunction with that set motion program, which they use in the occult to their advantage. So you see the parasitical element with the cat. Which is a common thing. We have a lot of interesting parasites. Some only develop in a cat's stomach and nowhere else, which will control the mind of a mouse to go against all its fear responses. It'll go right up to a cat to get eaten just so this parasite can reproduce. And just like I've been saying, viruses in us are doing things, gene editing, and have control of certain areas, and most importantly compartmentalizes areas of the subconscious, and becomes an interference pattern with when reaching higher perception. Or like, when some people's mind kind of collapses when they in spiritual experiences or taking certain psychedelic plants or whatever. It's the virus that seems to be interfering and causing autoimmune functions and stuff like that, because that's not, perception isn't good for its progression. It needs to keep its host where it is. Okay, this vid's gone for long enough. So obviously you can see all these connections. It's not too complicated, but it does get more complex. And I guess that's all I really have to say. I guess once again, like you're looking at the duck head, there's a lot of ducks and birds just sitting on the top of the heads. So you got combined beings. Some that shouldn't really be combined as well. Now you got like Isis, which is like a magical seed for continuing life. Like, how can I put it more scientifically? I don't know. It's an interesting seed that it seems to go with anything. Like, but I don't know what these connections that these things are using, or people that are going to hook up with these in the future or have done in the past. And more under this kind of deity, there's parasitical. To copy life, you need to introduce these replicators, which are associated with viruses and parasites, to fill in gaps in genetic code, to even keep someone grounded in the more material plane or paradigms or perspectives. So you've got to look at these associations, and we were talking about these inorganic beings as well. Like, they can connect to us through our DNA, and under certain magnetic lines. So with the magnetic excursion and things like that, the energetic grid is kind of out of whack. All these things, and combine that with sun cycles, and you got the weather. So you can't keep those out of the models. They're starting to bring these sort of things like sun particles and stuff like that into the environmental models, but it's going to be a few years yet till they get anywhere close to reality. So hopefully I've described the duck on the head situation. I don't know, like, yeah, these animals will come up to you. If they come up to you, like, yeah, help them out. They'll just land on you or whatever. They'll come up. They'll be starting to act more and more strange if you're in those sort of areas, not just fleeing for their lives. Take notice of it, and yeah, see you next time.